Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, welcome to a little bit of Total War Warhammer 2. So today we want to look a little bit at Nagaroth, the other High Elven faction that has a unique element to it. Now, I don't actually like these guys anywhere near as much as I like Averlorn, because unless you're doing a pick for Nagaroth for mind games, which is perfectly viable, and I think that it's the best way to play these guys, their actual unit roster is one where they're a little bit sort of telegraphed, because generally speaking, you take Nagaroth, you're stuck with Olithanar or generics, and the generic lords are usually less cost value than the higher level lords. Olithanar is actually a pretty decent lord, but he's not a great bruiser. He's not a great melee general, and he's sort of a weird kind of support general, and he's overcosted in that role. If I want a really good support general, I prefer Alarielle the Everqueen, because she's really good at that role. She's got decent spells, and her passive auras and buffs make it so she's got a good solution for a wide variety of different things. And she's amazingly good against a lot of the things out there now that are resistant to physical, because that's becoming a more and more common element to the game. By contrast, Olithanar, he's sort of resilience against missile fire, and it's not enough to make the army actually really super durable against it unless you're running something atypical. For example, if I took a large army of spearmen with Olithanar, they would be highly resilient against missiles. If I want to try and do a skirmish match with Lothran Seaguard with the shields, they'd be extremely resilient against missile fire, but that's not really what Olithanar is necessarily about, and you can definitely take them. The main problem with taking those sorts of units is that you will get rolled over by enemy melee troops. Now, you could take Olithanar with the 22% resistance and then bring units of Swordmasters and use his aura to help you close that gap without taking as much missile damage, but reasonably speaking, you don't want Olithanar to be in melee combat, so you're sort of wasting a lot of points on him for that purpose. You'd probably want to get rid of a couple of these abilities if you're doing him in a melee rush style army, but he's running into melee combat where he does not excel. His statistics are not really great for that. They're not terrible either. His melee attack being 65, his melee defense being 45 with the martial prowess does mean that he's not actually a pushover in melee, but he's not really that good at it either. You definitely want to take advantage of that 300 range and that 324 missile damage, just because you're paying for it, like as a bare minimum. His other aura here, again, not really too useful. You can definitely make use of the +5 melee defense in close quarters combat, but it's not a very high number. Most lords would give you a +10 bonus on whatever stat they're trying to give you. And if I really wanted to get a bonus like that, I could just throw in the Horn of Isha on one of these guys, and they're giving a +5 melee attack, which I find to be a little bit better than melee defense under most circumstances. So he's not necessarily the best thing in the world, and what's more, his aura, while his aura is technically speaking stronger than you're going to see on any individual hero or anything like that, and this is a very, very powerful one, I can actually replicate his ability with a noble and a handmaiden, although to a lesser extent. With these guys, you can get the Sacred Incense for 12% missile resistance. Handmaiden of the Everqueen is capable of getting a 15% bonus to a reload skill, so only 5 less, and 5 melee attack instead of 5 melee defense. So I can emulate his auras if I want him for the support. So what really differentiates Olithanar by himself is that powerful bow. And he misses a lot when I use this guy. Like, he has way too little homing on his particular arrow fire, or his missile projectile speed is way too slow, one of the two. But realistically speaking, I find that his shots, he's only got 30 of them too, and he has a very, very low rate of fire. He misses way too many of the shots to make him worthwhile for my book. Now, there are certain circumstances where he is well worth it. I find that he's actually quite good against Wood Elves, and the Nagarothi units, even though they're telegraphed, are good against Wood Elf compositions, just because you can actually kind of outshoot them in kind of way there. So the unique unit that these guys get, the only one they have is the Shadow Walker, and this kind of is what makes it so you can outshoot Wood Elves to a certain extent there. They have got that 18 range, or 180 range, which is sort of key to being able to at least fight them on par, otherwise you get sort of kited back by them. But what's really nice is they've got that -24% speed, and they've got -20% missile damage. Combine that with the Olithanar's -22% missile damage, and you're really looking at not taking that much damage from Wood Elven archery. So you can sort of if your opponent's clumped up too much with their archers, you can use these guys to really sort of fire down a large number of them, because you're going to be poisoning multiple units with these guys, generally speaking. And if you didn't take that many archers, these guys are actually still pretty good against Wood Elves. They're perfectly capable of sort of kiting backward against the Wood Elves, and dealing some pretty good ranged missile damage. And once they've actually done that damage, they're a very, very powerful melee unit against light infantry. And since Wood Elves have no option for the heavy infantry, these guys end up being quite cost efficient. Now, if you're up against pretty much any other faction in the game, these guys get run down by sort of heavier cavalry, but they can actually fight against light cavalry, and Wild Riders are a little bit too tough for these guys to kill. But broadly speaking, if someone's just sending something like Dark Riders, these guys can sort of fight against them to a certain degree. As long as they're not getting cycle charged too much and too badly. Although their poison does make it a little bit harder to cycle charge against them. Now, the one other problem with these guys is their very, very high price tag. And this is kind of the thought that I was having when I was looking at the new High Elven roster. Their new units do fill out their roster and flesh it out in a way that makes them quite difficult to counter. But none of these units are super cost efficient. 1,100 points for an armor-piercing missile unit is extremely good. Is extremely pricey, sorry, but it is a very, very powerful unit. The problem is that, are you going to get that cost back? It's very, very hard to actually do, because you basically have to expend like all of their ammunition to get substantially more damage out of these guys than, say, let's go with, where the hell's the Empire? Over here? Like, if I'm using just the friggin' unit of 600 point handgunners, I can practically get 2 of these guys for the same sort of value. And their individual shots don't do substantially less damage. And it's armor piercing as well. So, like, there are certain circumstances where the arc fire is much better. But, you know, a lot of these High Elven units are extremely brittle, really expensive, and you have to use them basically perfectly to get sort of the best use out of them. The Shadow Walkers sort of fit into that category. They have to basically blow through all of their ammunition and then wait into melee against a light infantry target. They will get mown down just because their melee defense is low, their armor is low, and their hit points are low. So even against relatively light targets, they will get killed off after a while. They will cause a lot of damage before they go down, but they will get killed off once they start fighting too much. I find that the Shadow Warriors, broadly speaking, are better value, actually. The poison is the main reason why I would take the Shadow Walkers over the Shadow Warriors, and is that really worth, like, 250 coins difference here? Broadly speaking, it's not, and so I generally speaking find that if I really want to take a Lithanar, I want to opt to not telegraph it and pick the regular High Elves. If I pick the regular High Elves, I can pick a Lithanar. I can sort of support him with a couple of Shadow Warriors if I really want to, but I don't really find the Shadow Walkers to be a great unit. They are powerful, but they're so expensive and they're so fragile that it's really hard to get the value out of them. And even when you do get the value out of them, are you really getting more value out of them than you would getting like 3 archer units, basically? I tend to find that the 3 archer units actually is going to do a little bit better. But let's show you one of the examples of an instance where I would actually take these guys in a sort of serious way. Now, one of the things about this faction that I can mention is that if I'm up against, say, the Empire or something like that, there have been sort of compositions that I've been playing up against the Empire, for example, where they take a lot of artillery, a couple handgunners, and some cavalry, but a very, very light infantry line. And you can sort of take advantage of the fact that that's probably what they're going to do by just taking enough stuff to blitz through their lines. Silver Chariots are actually pretty useful in that particular Ilthamar Chariots, are actually kind of useful in that sort of scenario, but you just basically blitz through them as best as you can, and get into their back line and start destroying their guns and stuff like that. You take lots of cheap troops and just swarm forward, knowing that even your spearmen can take out their infantry, and if he tangles with your spearmen with his heavy units, it doesn't really matter that much. The spearmen are a great tying unit for that sort of thing. But yeah, you can sort of cycle them out. You can make them think that you're going to go for a high-cost elite skirmishy army that he'd probably be able to really easily beat, since most factions I've been playing against have got really easy answers against a Shadow Warrior, Shadow Walker heavy army. And like, they're so expensive and tricky to use that you don't want to just take a couple of them and hope that they do a lot of stuff by themselves. Usually what happens if you just have a little bit of them is the enemy just sort of blitzes forward towards your army and they won't have accomplished much. If you take a lot of these guys, you can sort of force your opponent to play in weird ways, which can help out, but it's kind of a tricky balancing act. But in any event, I'll show you kind of a match that I've played here that kind of represents when they're working at their best here. So, like I said, I don't really think that these guys are necessarily that great, but I have had pretty good success against them against Wood Elves. This player is not particularly great with his Wood Elves, but it's certainly possible to win against even better players with Wood Elves. I played against ones that was able to manage like I was able to surround him on 3 sides, and he was still able to micro his units quite effectively. And these units still were able to beat him, despite the fact that I was trying to skirmish against him on 3 sides. Not exactly easy from my point of view either. One of the things I did find is that you kind of need a heavy hitter for these guys, and the cavalry don't really work for them, I find. So I've been taking Sun Dragons or Moon Dragons for these guys. In any event, though, here's where Lithanar is kind of okay. He's fired off a really big shot there from the Moonbow, smashing into their Glade Lord, dealing hundreds of points of damage. We're able to deal some pick-off shots against these Eternal Guard with shields. Nothing too good in terms of damage because they've got that silver block chance, but we're still getting some damage off. We are going to switch over to the Glade Guard eventually, but for some reason, Lithanar is starting to fire at the Eternal Guard when he should be focused firing at the Glade Lord here. He takes a couple hundred more damage from just random stray arrows, but not really that important, but he takes a big hit, more importantly, from Lithanar himself. Now, I don't have the usual thing that I want to have here. Now, here's where we get into the skirmish fight proper, and we were seeing that 22% resistance for my missiles from the Shadow Warriors, and that, like, we've already shredded down one of his units of Glade Guard with Starfire Shaft. He shouldn't have taken Starfire Shafts in this sort of numbers, honestly, but it wouldn't have made a huge difference in terms of the effects here. This unit is just not taking as much damage as you would really expect, partly because a lot of these units are actually poisoned. And every one of my units has like 22% damage resistance against these arrows here. Over here, Sun Dragon's going to go over and just beat up their Glade Lord here. I do wish that Sun Dragons actually had fire resistance, because that would make sense. But also, like, we've just beaten 3 units of archers, and we haven't actually lost any of our archers. My Lithanar clone gets killed because of duration. That's fine. I do actually start losing my Sun Dragon to start fire shafts. He breathes on my dragon. I breathed on his dragon. Not really a great choice for either of us, but at this point in time, his dragon is actually so weakened that this is good to trade for me, and also he's taking some friendly fire, which is pretty interesting. I did take actually a Lore Master of Hoth, who's assassinated him with a little bit of a spell there, which has worked out pretty well. But in any event, what's happening here is my opponent has now crashed into my lines, and I've managed to get off some good shots against these Eternal Guards. So they're a little bit weakened. Some of them are poisoned, some of them are whatever. The Glade Lord now running away from my Sun Dragon, which is going to get killed off by these Glade Guard, but who cares? I've basically gotten rid of their Glade Lord with that. So what was going on here? Well, I was able to win a skirmish match against the Wood Elves. We got ourselves the Signs of Mathlin here. We're basically going to be an impenetrable line against the Eternal Guard. They just can't really kill High Elves with that combination. Now, he's ever going to get around with the Azrai. I did another arrow against the Treeman, and it did nothing. The Moonbow, like, that, it's a 2-charge ability. You'd think that would actually do a little bit of damage there, but no, it's just, like, takes it like a goddamn champion. Glade Lord will come back, but it's really not that relevant at this point in time. The War Dancer Azrai Spear getting absolutely shredded here, partly actually due to friendly fire. Now, I'm trying to actually target these guys, but this unit is just a little bit too far away to fire from this angle because of the melee up here. They aren't willing to walk up to it, so they actually have to turn off fire at will. What I have to do is like put them on melee mode and just charge them into here, because they're actually pretty good in melee, Shadow Walkers, so they would actually just trounce these sorts of units. Over here, War Dancers are trying to chase after my archers. My opponent really made a mistake here. He's running away from my unit of the Shadow Warriors here, which are sort of running them down, and he's now kind of gotten surrounded on 3 sides with his Azrai Spears by my units here. So he's getting shot at, which is causing a lot of damage to the Azrai Spears, and I'm sort of getting around, and they break pretty quickly. They're just too surrounded, and their morale sort of broke. popping healing spells over here is sort of how we're staying in this fight to a certain degree. It'll keep me in there long enough, but at this point in time, my opponent really can't look at that whiff a tree. Like, he can't even hit a goddamn tree. That's such an embarrassment. But yeah, my opponent's causing a lot of friendly fire to himself. This is one of the other sort of advantages that I like about the these sort of skirmishy units, is that they can get around the flanks a little bit more easily and a little bit more safely because they're good enough in melee combat. The Lore Master of Hoth's actually done a pretty crappy job in terms of, like, not dying. He's got 90 armor, so I figured he'd be okay, but I guess everything the Wood Elves took today is armor piercing. Ulthanar here, still firing away with his stupid bow, misses the tree again, because he sucks. So, I'd like to know from you guys, like, if any of you are playing this game, do you have the problem where Ulthanar never seems to hit anything? There, he got him, but it caused like 200 points of damage. I think the spearmen are legit causing more damage to this tree man than he is. Anyway, Shadow Warriors walking down the side there, the archers over here. We're managing to get some shots into these Glade Guard, and we're applying poison to like all three of these units here, and that's basically stopping them from being effective in any way, shape, or form here, which is pretty great, in all honesty. Actually, are we? Yeah, Shadow Walkers are firing into them, so their damage is low. Their damage is lowered by the aura, and that's going to be the match there. So, worked out pretty well. Pretty well. My opponent, again, not that great, but it has worked consistently against Wood Elves. It's just, it does not seem to work against any faction other than Wood Elves. 89 kills on one unit of Shadow Warriors, 57 on the other. Then we got 51 kills and 62 kills on the Shadow Walkers. Now, what was quite impressive is one of the Shadow Walker units did kill a unit of Azrai Spears, essentially chasing after it in melee combat. If I'd been using normal Shadow Warriors, and it's deceptive, but if I had been using a unit of normal Shadow Warriors, I would not have gotten those kills because the Azrai Spear are substantially faster than Shadow Warriors. The poison reducing their speed by 24% is what let them actually keep up to kill them. And I'm not sure my opponent really realized that that was what was happening while he was chasing after my archers, but that is what was happening. My Sun Dragon actually substantially better than it looks there. It looks like he got 0 kills. In reality, he basically was the one that finished off the Glade Lord, and even though the Glade Lord was sort of already at half health, very nice to be able to chase him off, send him off, even though, you know, sacrifice the Sun Dragon in the process there. So yeah, like my opponent here has got 26 kills, 13 kills, 19 kills, 17, 6, and 10 on his archers. Those are fairly low kill counts. I'm getting substantially more on all of my archer units, and that's partly because of Ulthanar and his aura of not taking archer damage, but also sort of just in the broader context, I'm able to sort of pick and choose my fights. I'm able to reduce his damage with the Shadow Walkers, so the utility of these guys is not necessarily immediately obvious. Their kill count is rarely going to represent the full value that they brought into battle, but broadly speaking, I still don't find that these guys are worth 1,100 points. Even the Shadow Warriors, I often find are probably not worth 850, and I think it's just that broadly speaking, these kinds of very elite skirmish infantry, these very elite archer infantry, are a little bit overcosted for what they actually can accomplish. Not necessarily by that much, and one of the things that they could certainly do is make the more elite archer units have a much higher rate of fire or something like that. I'm not really sure what they could do about it. The other alternative of what they could do is make it so that, you know, if I do a front line of spearmen or something like that, an opponent can't just bypass it by constantly clicking through them. That's another possibility, because right now, like, there's no point in trying to protect archers. If a dedicated rush army tries to get to your archers, they will. There's nothing you can really do about it. So maybe that's what they need to do, but in any event, that's going to be our episode for today. Nagaroth, not necessarily my favorite faction, the Shadow Walkers. Situationally useful. I think that the way that I'm going to be playing Nagaroth is to play them like very heavy rush style High Elves, without Ulthanar and without any sort of skirmishing scout type units, just so that I can mind games my opponent, make them think that I'm going to be going for a heavy skirmisher, or I'm going to take them against Wood Elves and play them legit as Nagarothi, because I find that the Wood Elves have a difficulty countering this sort of composition. So anyway, that's going to be our video for today. Hope you found it enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.